I'm crushed and desperate. It all started when I noticed money missing from our savings for the dream house. My wife swore she knew nothing, but I soon discovered she was using it to support her young lover. My marriage, which I worked so hard to sustain, went to hell. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take it one step at a time. I never thought I'd be in this position, but life can be a real kicker. My name's Mike, and I've been busting my butt working 2 jobs to save up for our dream house. I've been married to Lisa for 8 years, and we've got a kid, Dylan. I thought we had a solid life, even if I was exhausted all the time. Lisa stayed home with Dylan, and I brought home the bacon. Everything seemed fine, until it wasn't. It started off so subtly. Lisa began acting strange, distant, always glued to her phone, making up excuses to go out more often. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she needed a break or just some time for herself. Being a stay-at-home mom is tough, and I get that. But then I started noticing discrepancies with our money. I'd been saving every penny I could, but the numbers weren't adding up. One night, after another grueling 16-hour day, I sat down to go through our savings. We were supposed to be getting closer to our dream house, but it seemed like we were stuck. I meticulously checked our accounts and realized a significant amount was missing. I felt a pit in my stomach. How could this be? I knew our expenses and they didn't match up with the withdrawals. I confronted Lisa the next day, trying to keep my voice calm, though I was anything but. Lisa, have you noticed anything strange with our savings? There's a lot of money missing. She looked at me with a mix of surprise and annoyance. What are you talking about, Mike? I haven't spent anything out of the ordinary. Groceries, bills, the usual stuff. But it doesn't add up, I insisted. There's more missing than just our daily expenses. Are you sure you haven't used it for something else? Lisa's expression turned defensive. Are you seriously accusing me of spending our money without telling you? I'm not doing anything wrong, Mike. Maybe you just made a mistake. Her defensiveness caught me off guard. Lisa was usually so calm and collected. The more she denied it, the more convinced I became that something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying to me. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there in front of me. Over the next few weeks, I tried to keep a closer eye on our finances and Lisa's behavior. She continued to go out more frequently, always with vague explanations. Just meeting up with some friends, she'd say, or running errands. Each time, I felt a pang of doubt. One evening, I decided to follow her. I know it sounds paranoid, but I needed to know what was going on. She left the house around 7 p.m., saying she was meeting a friend for coffee. I waited a few minutes before slipping out and trailing her car. My heart was pounding the entire time. I felt like a character in one of those detective shows, except this was my life unraveling in real time. She drove across town to a part of the city we rarely visited. I kept my distance, trying not to be seen. She parked in front of a small, dingy apartment complex. My stomach churned as I watched her get out and walk up to one of the units. A young guy, maybe in his mid-20s, opened the door and let her in. They hugged briefly before disappearing inside. I sat in my car, stunned. Who was this guy? And why was Lisa meeting him? I couldn't bring myself to leave. I just sat there staring at the door, my mind racing with possibilities. I wanted to barge in and demand answers, but I knew I had to be smart about this. After what felt like an eternity, Lisa came out, looking around nervously. She got back into her car and drove off. I followed her back home, my mind a whirlwind of anger and confusion. When I walked in, she was already in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. "How was coffee?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It was fine," she replied casually. "Just caught up with an old friend." I nodded, my fists clenched at my sides. Good to hear. That night, I barely slept. My mind was filled with images of Lisa and that guy. I needed to know more. The next day, I confided in my best friend, Tom. He's been my rock for years, and I knew I could trust him. "Tom, I think Lisa's cheating on me," I blurted out, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Tom looked at me with wide eyes. "Are you sure, man? That's a heavy accusation." "I followed her last night. She went to some guy's apartment. I don't know what to do." Tom sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mike, you need proof. Real proof. If she's lying to you, you have to catch her red-handed. Do you want me to help?" "Yeah," I nodded, feeling a spark of hope. "I need your help, Tom. I need to know the truth." Tom agreed to follow Lisa the next time she went out. He had more flexibility with his job and could take the time to do it. I felt guilty for dragging him into my mess, but I didn't know what else to do. A few days later, Lisa announced she was going out again. "Just running some errands," she said, avoiding my eyes. I texted Tom and he sprang into action. Hours passed, and my anxiety grew with each tick of the clock. Finally, Tom called me. "Mike, I've got something. Meet me at the usual spot." We met at our favorite bar, a quiet place where we could talk without interruptions. Tom looked grim as he slid into the booth across from me. "She's cheating, Mike," he said bluntly. "I followed her to the same apartment. Saw her with the same guy. They were all over each other. I'm sorry, man." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The world seemed to tilt, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "Are you sure?" I whispered, though I knew the answer. Tom nodded. "I'm sure. I took pictures just in case you need them for whatever you decide to do next." I couldn't believe it. Lisa, my wife, the mother of my child, was cheating on me, and she was using our hard-earned money to support her lover. Anger, betrayal, and heartbreak washed over me in waves. I needed to confront her, but I had to be smart about it. "Thanks, Tom," I said, my voice shaking. "I appreciate your help. I need to figure out what to do next." We talked for a while longer, strategizing the best way to confront Lisa. I knew it was going to be ugly, but I had no choice. She needed to know that I was on to her, and I wasn't going to let her get away with this. When I got home, Lisa was already asleep. I stared at her for a long time, wondering how she could betray me like this. How she could look me in the eye every day and lie to my face. I felt like a fool, but I knew I had to gather my strength for the confrontation ahead. This was just the beginning. I had the proof I needed, but now I had to face the reality of my broken marriage and the woman I thought I knew. Morning hit like a sledgehammer. Lisa was already up, humming away in the kitchen, making breakfast for Dylan. The normalcy of it all felt like some sick joke. How could she be so calm, so ordinary, after everything? I went through the motions, pretending everything was fine, but inside, I was unraveling. I had to act normal, at least until I figured out my next move. Every time Lisa looked at me with those big, innocent eyes, I felt a surge of anger. The missing money, our savings, she was taking what I worked so hard for and giving it to her lover. It was like a knife in my gut, twisting every time I thought about it. Over the next few days, I tried to keep busy. Work was a welcome distraction, but it was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. Lisa's behavior became more suspicious. She'd get texts and smile at her phone, then quickly put it away. She started going out more often, with even flimsier excuses. One evening, she told me she was going to visit her sister. "I won't be back until late," she said, avoiding my gaze. I nodded, my heart pounding. This was it. I texted Tom as soon as she left, and he agreed to follow her again. Hours crawled by. I paced the living room, unable to sit still. Dylan was asleep, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in our lives. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was Tom. "Mike, you're not going to believe this. She's at the guy's place again. Same dude, same apartment." I felt a mix of relief and dread. I had the confirmation I needed, but it didn't make it hurt any less. "Thanks, Tom," I replied. "I owe you one." When Lisa got home that night, I was sitting in the kitchen waiting. She walked in, all smiles, and froze when she saw me. "Mike, what are you doing up?" "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. She looked nervous, but she sat down across from me. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. "I know, Lisa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know about the guy. I know you've been lying to me. I know you've been using our money to support him." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about? You're being ridiculous, Mike." "Don't lie to me!" I shouted, slamming my hand on the table. "Tom followed you. He saw you with him. I've seen the texts, Lisa. How could you do this to us?" She stared at me, her eyes wide. For a moment, I thought she might deny it again, but then her shoulders slumped. "Fine," she said quietly. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but yes, I've been seeing someone else." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. "Why, Lisa? Why would you do this? After everything we've been through, everything I've done for us?" She looked away, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know, Mike. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "But it did," I said, my voice breaking. "And you've been using our money to support him? How could you?" She started crying, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered all the lies, all the deceit. I couldn't let her tears sway me. "I want you to leave," I said, standing up. "Pack your things and go. I can't do this anymore." Lisa looked up at me, shocked. "Mike, please, let's talk about this. We can work it out." "There's nothing to talk about," I said firmly. "You've betrayed me, Lisa. You've betrayed our family. Just go." She cried harder, but I stood my ground. After a few minutes, she got up and went to our bedroom to pack. I felt numb watching her go. This was the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, and now she was leaving, taking our future with her. Tom came over later that night. We sat in silence for a long time, drinking beers and trying to make sense of it all. "I'm sorry, man," he said finally. "I wish there was something I could do." "You've done more than enough," I replied. "Thanks for having my back." Over the next few days, I started the painful process of picking up the pieces. Lisa moved in with her sister, and I focused on taking care of Dylan. He was confused and upset, but I did my best to reassure him that everything would be okay. The hardest part was facing the reality of my shattered dreams. All those long hours, all the sacrifices I'd made seemed meaningless now. I didn't know how to move forward, but I knew I had to try, for Dylan's sake, if nothing else. One day I decided to check our finances again. I wanted to see just how much damage Lisa had done. As I went through the accounts, I found more missing money than I'd initially realized. She'd been siphoning off funds for months, maybe even longer. The betrayal cut even deeper, knowing how long she'd been lying to me. I felt a mix of rage and despair. How could she do this to us? To Dylan? I wanted to confront her, to make her explain herself, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. The trust was gone, and there was no getting it back. I spent more time with Tom, talking things through and trying to figure out my next steps. He was a constant support, reminding me that I wasn't alone. I didn't know what I'd do without him. As the days turned into weeks, I started to see a glimmer of hope. I began to realize that I could rebuild, that I could create a new future for Dylan and me. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be the life I'd envisioned, but it was something. One evening, as I was tucking Dylan into bed, he looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes and said, "Dad, are we going to be okay?" I felt a lump in my throat, but I managed to smile. "Yeah, buddy, we're going to be okay. It's just going to take some time." As I left his room, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I would get through this, for Dylan's sake and for my own. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I started to make plans, setting new goals for our future. I didn't know exactly what that future would look like, but I was ready to find out. And as I took those first tentative steps, I began to feel a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, everything would turn out okay after all. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The days were filled with an unbearable tension, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Lisa tried to contact me a few times, sending long, apologetic texts and leaving voicemails that swung wildly between remorseful and accusatory. I ignored most of them. I couldn't deal with her right now. I needed to focus on Dylan and myself. One afternoon, I decided it was time to do a little more digging. I took a deep breath, opened Lisa's laptop, and started going through her emails. It felt wrong, invasive, but I had to know. I had to see for myself just how deep her betrayal went. As I scrolled through her inbox, my heart pounded. Most of it was mundane: newsletters, bills, social media notifications. But then I found an email chain with a name I didn't recognize. Curious, I opened it, and my world came crashing down. There it was, in black and white. Love letters, plans to meet up, even discussions about money. She had been siphoning off our savings to support this guy, Chris. He was younger, flashier, everything I wasn't. The emails painted a picture of a woman I didn't know, someone deceitful and manipulative. I felt sick. This was worse than I had imagined. She hadn't just cheated. She had built an entire life with this guy, using my hard-earned money to do it. I printed out the emails, every damning one of them, and shoved them into a folder. This was my evidence, my smoking gun. That evening I called Tom. "I've got everything I need," I said, my voice cold and detached. "It's time to confront her." Tom agreed to come over. We needed a plan, and I needed support. When he arrived, we went over the emails, making sure I had everything in order. I felt like a soldier preparing for battle. Lisa showed up unexpectedly, looking frazzled. She must have sensed something was up. "Mike, we need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway. "Oh, we're going to talk," I replied, my voice icy. Tom stepped out of the shadows and Lisa's eyes widened. "What's he doing here?" "He's here to make sure you don't try to weasel out of this," I said, holding up the folder. "I know everything, Lisa. The lies, the money, the other guy. I have it all right here." She looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Mike, please let me explain." "Explain? What's there to explain?" I shouted, my anger boiling over. "You've been lying to me for months, stealing from our savings to support your boy toy. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To Dylan?" Lisa burst into tears, but I wasn't moved. "It just happened, Mike. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Chris needed help and I—" "You what? Decided to destroy our family to help him?" I cut her off. "Do you even hear yourself?" Tom stepped forward, his presence a steadying influence. "Lisa, you need to leave. Pack your things and go. Mike deserves better than this." Lisa's tears turned to anger. "You don't get to tell me what to do. This is my house too." "Not anymore," I said, my voice firm. "You've made your choice. Now live with it." She stormed off to our bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I sank into a chair, exhausted. Tom put a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Mike. It's going to be tough, but you'll get through this." I nodded, too drained to speak. After what felt like an eternity, Lisa emerged with a suitcase. "I hope you're happy," she spat, her eyes red and swollen. "This isn't about happiness, Lisa. This is about trust, and you shattered it," I replied quietly. She left without another word, the door closing behind her with a finality that felt like a death knell. I sat there, staring at the door, my heart heavy with a mix of sorrow and relief. Tom stayed with me that night. We talked about everything, our childhood, our dreams, the future. It was comforting to have him there, a reminder that I wasn't alone. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. I had to pick up the pieces, not just for myself, but for Dylan. He deserved better. I started making changes, small at first. I spent more time with Dylan, took him to the park, helped him with his homework. I needed to be present for him, to make up for all the time I'd spent working 2 jobs. I also began to rebuild our finances. It was tough, starting over from scratch, but I was determined. I cut back on unnecessary expenses, made a budget, and stuck to it. Slowly but surely, I began to see progress. One day, while sorting through some old papers, I found a note from Lisa. It was an apology, scribbled hastily on a piece of notebook paper. She said she was sorry for everything, that she hoped one day I could forgive her. I stared at the note for a long time, feeling a mix of emotions. The note from Lisa stayed in my hand, crumpled, a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Her words, hollow apologies, echoed in my mind. Could I ever forgive her? Did I even want to? As I sat there, drowning in a sea of memories and broken promises, I realized that knowing the full story might help me move on, one way or another. I needed to know just how deep her betrayal went. So, I made a decision. I would meet Chris face to face. Maybe it was masochistic, but I had to hear it from him. I had to see what kind of person she had chosen over our family. I managed to track him down easily enough. He worked at a coffee shop downtown, a hip, trendy place where people like him probably felt right at home. One afternoon, I walked in, my heart racing. The place was buzzing with life, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. Chris was behind the counter, chatting and laughing with customers. He was everything I expected, young, good-looking, exuding a careless charm. As I approached, he noticed me and smiled. "What can I get for you?" "A few minutes of your time," I replied, my voice steady. "It's about Lisa." His smile faltered. Sure. Give me a second." He called over a coworker to cover for him and led me to a table in the corner. "Look, man, if this is about Lisa, I don't know what she's told you, but I just want the truth," I interrupted. "How long has this been going on?" Chris sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "About a year. We met at a party, hit it off, and things just escalated from there. I didn't know she was married at first, but by the time I found out, I was already in too deep." "A year," I repeated, the words like a punch to the gut. "And the money? She's been giving you our savings?" He looked uncomfortable. "Yeah, she said it was her money. She wanted to help me out, said she was stuck in a bad marriage. I never asked for it, but I didn't refuse either." I felt a surge of anger. "You didn't think to question it? To ask where it was coming from?" "Look, I know it was wrong," he said quickly. "I'm sorry, I really am. If I had known the full extent—" "But you didn't care enough to find out," I snapped. "You just took what she offered and didn't look back." He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry, Mike. For what it's worth, we're not seeing each other anymore. She ended it after you found out. That doesn't make it any better," I said, standing up. "But thanks for the honesty." I left the coffee shop feeling strangely lighter. Hearing it from Chris, seeing the reality of it, gave me a sense of closure. It hurt, but it also felt like a step towards healing. Now I had to figure out what to do next. Back home, I sat down with Tom again. We talked about everything. My meeting with Chris, the note from Lisa, my plans for the future. He listened, offering advice and support. It was a long conversation, one that I desperately needed. As the weeks turned into months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I spent as much time as possible with Dylan, making sure he felt loved and secure. We went on trips, had movie nights, and just enjoyed being together. He was my anchor, the reason I kept going. Financially, things were tight, but I managed. I picked up extra shifts where I could, cut back on unnecessary expenses, and slowly started to rebuild our savings. It was hard work, but I was determined to create a stable future for Dylan and me. Lisa tried to reach out a few more times, but I didn't respond. Her apologies felt empty, and I wasn't ready to forgive her. Maybe someday, but not now. I had to focus on moving forward, on building a new life. One evening, while sorting through some old photos, I came across a picture of Lisa and me from happier times. We looked so young, so in love. I stared at it for a long time, feeling a mix of nostalgia and sadness. It was a reminder of what could have been, of the dreams we once shared. But dreams change, people change, and sometimes the only way to move forward is to let go of the past. I placed the photo back in the box and closed the lid, feeling a sense of finality. It was time to create new memories, to build a future that was mine and Dylan's. Tom and I continued to meet regularly, and our conversations shifted from the past to the future. We talked about everything, from career goals to personal dreams. He encouraged me to start thinking about what I wanted for myself, beyond being a father and provider. I began to explore new interests, trying out hobbies I'd never had time for before. I started running, joined a local book club, and even took a few cooking classes. It felt good to do something for myself, to reclaim a sense of identity that had been lost in the chaos. One day, while I was at the park with Dylan, I ran into an old friend from high school, Emily. We hadn't seen each other in years, but we quickly fell into an easy conversation. She was recently divorced too, and we found comfort in sharing our experiences. Over the next few weeks, we started meeting up regularly. It was nice to have someone to talk to, someone who understood what I was going through. Emily became a close friend, and eventually something more. It was unexpected, but felt right. As our relationship grew, I realized that I could love again, that there was life after betrayal. It wasn't easy, and there were still days when the pain resurfaced, but I was healing. Emily was patient and understanding, and she brought a light into my life that I hadn't realized was missing. Lisa's betrayal had shattered me, but it also forced me to rebuild, to rediscover who I was and what I wanted. In a strange way, it had set me free. One evening, as I watched Dylan play with Emily's kids, I felt a sense of peace. This was my new beginning, a chance to create a happy, stable life for all of us. It wasn't the future I had envisioned, but it was a future filled with hope and possibility. I took a deep breath and smiled. We were going to be okay. We were going to be more than okay. And that was enough. With Lisa gone and the truth out in the open, I found myself at a crossroads. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew I had to keep moving. For Dylan, for myself. I had to turn the pain into strength, the betrayal into a lesson. I started by setting clear goals for the future. Financial stability was at the top of the list. I continued to work hard, saving every penny I could. The dream of owning a house was still alive, but it was now a dream I held for Dylan and me, not for a broken marriage. Tom remained a constant presence in my life, offering support and encouragement. He suggested I see a therapist, and after some initial reluctance, I agreed. Talking to someone unbiased helped me process the emotions I'd been burying. It was a slow process, but each session felt like a step towards healing. I also made sure to focus on Dylan's well-being. He was young, but kids are perceptive. He knew something had changed, and I wanted to ensure he felt loved and secure. We spent more time together, building a bond that was stronger than ever. One afternoon, as we were playing catch in the yard, Dylan looked up at me and said, "Dad, are we always going to be together?" I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Always, buddy, no matter what." Those words became my mantra. No matter what, I would be there for him. I would be the stability he needed, the anchor in our ever-changing world. As the months passed, I began to feel a sense of normalcy returning. The pain was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. I found joy in the little things, Dylan's laughter, a good book, a quiet evening. Life was starting to feel okay again. Emily and I continued to grow closer. We took things slow, aware of the scars we both carried. But there was something undeniable between us, a connection that felt real and genuine. She became a source of comfort and joy, a reminder that life could be beautiful again. One evening, as we sat on her porch watching the sunset, she took my hand. "Mike, I know we've both been through a lot, but I want you to know that I'm here for you, whatever you need, whenever you need it." I squeezed her hand, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Thank you, Emily. You've been a light in the darkness. I don't know what I'd do without you." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange. It was a moment of peace, a sign that things were going to be okay. The process of healing was far from over, but I was on the right path. With Dylan by my side and the support of friends like Tom and Emily, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The future was uncertain, but it was also filled with promise. I had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but I had also discovered my own resilience, my ability to rebuild and find happiness again. The journey was far from easy, but each step forward was a testament to my strength and determination. One Saturday morning, Dylan and I decided to tackle a project that had been on my mind for a while, building a treehouse in the backyard. It was something I had always wanted to do, and now seemed like the perfect time. We gathered materials, sketched out plans, and got to work. It was a messy, chaotic process, but it was exactly what we needed. As we hammered nails and sawed wood, we talked about everything and nothing. Dylan's laughter echoed through the yard, a sound that filled my heart with hope. The treehouse became more than just a structure. It became a symbol of our new beginning. Emily often joined us, lending a hand and bringing snacks. Her presence was a steady comfort, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this journey. The treehouse took shape over the weeks, a testament to our collective effort and determination. One evening, as we put the finishing touches on the treehouse, Dylan climbed up and looked out over the yard. "Dad, this is amazing. Thank you for building it with me." I climbed up beside him, looking out at the view. We did it together, buddy. This is our special place now. As we sat there, watching the sunset, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. We had created something beautiful out of the chaos, a new chapter in our lives. Lisa tried to reach out a few more times, sending messages that ranged from apologetic to desperate. I read them but didn't respond. The past was behind me and I was focused on the future. Forgiveness might come someday, but for now, I needed to protect the new life I was building. One day, I received a letter from Lisa. It was long and heartfelt, filled with apologies and regrets. She admitted to her mistakes, acknowledged the pain she had caused, and expressed a desire to make amends. She asked for forgiveness, not necessarily for reconciliation, but to find closure and peace. I read the letter several times, feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a tinge of sympathy, but also a realization that forgiveness wasn't just for her, it was for me too. Holding on to the anger and hurt would only keep me chained to the past. I decided to meet her, to have one final conversation, and find the closure we both needed. We met at a quiet cafe, a neutral place where we could talk without the weight of memories pressing down on us. Lisa looked different, worn and tired. The confident, carefree woman I once knew was gone, replaced by someone who seemed burdened by regret. "Thank you for meeting me, Mike," she said quietly. "I got your letter," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "I've read it a lot, trying to process everything." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mike, for everything. I know I can't undo the damage I've done, but I needed to tell you how deeply I regret my actions." "Why, Lisa? Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for so long. She sighed, looking down at her hands. "I don't know if I have a clear answer. I felt trapped, unappreciated. Chris was an escape, a way to feel alive again. But it was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I see that now." I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm working on forgiving you, Lisa, not for your sake, but for mine. I need to move on, to let go of the anger and hurt." She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Thank you, Mike. That means more than you know. I wish you all the happiness in the world." We talked for a while longer, sharing memories and reflecting on the good times. It was a bittersweet conversation, but it brought a sense of closure. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of peace. The chapter with Lisa was truly over, and I was ready to fully embrace the future. Back home, I found Dylan and Emily playing in the treehouse. Their laughter filled the air, a joyful melody that warmed my heart. I climbed up to join them, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Life had thrown me into a storm, but I had emerged stronger, with a clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted. The pain of the past had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. I was ready to move forward, to create a life filled with love, joy, and new memories. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the yard, I knew that everything was going to be okay. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. We were going to be okay, more than okay. We were going to thrive. With the past behind me, I focused entirely on the future. Each day was a new opportunity to build the life I wanted for Dylan and myself. The treehouse project had not only given us a physical symbol of our new beginning, but also strengthened our bond. We spent countless hours there, talking, playing, and simply being together. It became our sanctuary, a place where the troubles of the world seemed far away. Emily became a more significant part of our lives. Our relationship grew naturally, built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. She was patient, never pushing, always supporting. Her presence was a balm to my wounded heart, and over time, I found myself falling in love again. One sunny afternoon, we all gathered in the backyard for a barbecue. Dylan was running around with Emily's kids, their laughter echoing in the air. Tom was there too, flipping burgers on the grill, a constant reminder of the solid friendship that had helped me through the darkest times. As I looked around, I felt a profound sense of contentment. This was my new family, my new reality. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was better in many ways. It was real, honest, and filled with love. Lisa's betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it had also been a turning point. It forced me to reassess my life, my values, and what truly mattered. It led me to reconnect with old friends, find new love, and build a stronger relationship with my son. Forgiveness didn't come easily, but it came nonetheless. Meeting with Lisa had allowed me to release the anger and move forward. I didn't forget, but I chose to forgive, for my own sake and for Dylan's. Holding on to the past would only hinder our future. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life had tested me, but I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and with a clearer sense of purpose. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them, surrounded by the people I loved. That evening, as we sat around the fire pit, Dylan snuggled up next to me and whispered, "Dad, I'm really happy." I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Me too, buddy. Me too." Emily squeezed my hand, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "We're going to be okay, Mike, all of us." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Yes, we are." In that moment, surrounded by laughter and love, I knew that we had not just survived the storm, we had thrived. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities. And as I looked at the faces of my new family, I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together, stronger and more united than ever.